And now I invite Ella Pustulka for the second talk. She will present how to extend SQL scrolls to teach SQL DML. I don't know what is DML, but okay, we will learn about it. So welcome.
SQL is structured query language. If you have a database, it speaks generally SQL. So I'm going to play this video in the background. Can I play it?
Yeah, sure. If you click here.
Oh, it's starting. Yeah, the video is playing now. So what we have there is a game that we teach with. I use it in teaching. So it's supposed to be closer. Okay. So we use the game in teaching, and it was developed by Kai Krause as part of his master thesis about a year ago. He repurposed an existing game from Finland. And basically, he added his own content, debugged it, and made it available. And now I have a program funded by the school until end of the summer, where we're extending the game. I have a collaborator, Andrea Kennel, who is in Brook at the school. She also teaches databases. And I have a student, Shari Meyer, who's now doing her bachelor degree, and she's improving the game. So she's done a lot of good work in improving the usability. And now move to the next one. And sorry, Lucia is the programmer. She's got a PhD in machine learning and things like this. I'm trying it, okay. So the message is, this is a digitalized game, and it's used in teaching. So it's like a repository of questions that students use to learn, to practice. And I'll talk about what is SQL and do students like it. So it's all about magic, okay? You guys, you sit down in front of your computer and you press a few buttons and then you know it all. It's almost like hypnosis. You're very good in SQL after that. So what happens with SQL? SQL is a language that databases speak. If you talk about a school like I'm in a business school, in each business you have a business information system. And business information systems mostly consist of 3 parts. They always have a database, okay? They have a database. It may be in the cloud or somewhere, but it's a database. There is some kind of business logic, and there's a front end, so this is usually now a web page or some kind of app. And databases currently speak SQL. There are some new databases which speak no SQL, but it's not really a standard language. So we're also working in that direction. So what we have here, this whole thing was started with COVID. So it was during COVID, and you have very little contact with students during COVID. You know, you're basically teaching online, and you're staring at black screens. So that wasn't very exciting. So actually bringing the game at that time was very useful for everyone. And this is on the right-hand side, you see what a kind of different ERP systems, enterprise resource planning, or business information systems there are. Just a very bright spectrum of all kinds of systems, and they all run on SQL and databases currently. So what we have here, this is the SQL. And when I submitted this paper, I have marked quite a few things. So you see those blue arrows as future work. We have now handled all this. So we have added a lot of questions. We started with 41 or 42 questions, and now we have almost 150 questions. And we've got lots of books. So all these things with blue arrows are the new parts. So we've basically extended the game with create table statements, and like when you declare new data structures with inserts, deletes, updates, and similar stuff, and also a wider range of SQL. So we cover syntactically almost everything that's important and that can be done on the platform that we're using. And the usability was a problem because now as we add more material, you can see we've got more books. So our student Shari has improved that considerably now. So we can manage basically much more. She's added some scrolling and some other pop-up things and improved the appearance of it, so it's more usable. What we have here, I've got 2 graphs that we just generated on how the game is changing. So you see the first part on the left-hand side is about 40 questions that were released in the first release. So obviously they have been played many, many times. And you can see that everyone who played each question, they were successful, like 99%, you know. 99% of people managed to pass each question, yeah? So there's like completion of each task, a percentage of completion of each task. And you see some new tasks have not been tried yet because we just released them about a week ago. And they are now being used actively. The exam is in about 3 days, so I hope we get a better statistics in 2 or 3 days. And now you see in red underneath, these are all the new tasks. So they've been added during term, and we constantly add them. And we've used an interesting trick. We set the students a free scope task, a free scope assignment. Please design a system and write SQL queries with 1 table, with 2 tables, with 3, with 4 tables. And now we're redrafting all this and reusing that. It needs a lot of work still, but we've got some data and we can reuse it in the game. And this is the number of tries people had. So you see here that some of the questions seem to be harder, and people need more tries. So the green part is, you know, the kind of like how many people did it and how many tries there are in total, the brown ones. So we have this data actually stored in a MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database. So this is another reason why we're going now into a different direction. At the moment, this is all SQL. We now have a master project which will add NoSQL to it. So people will also be able to train for the modern technologies. Obviously, NoSQL comes in so many variants that it's hard to decide what you should learn and how to support it. But we're trying to experiment with that. And basically what we have higher student engagement. Because if you have a traditional lecture-based teaching, students just listen if they're polite. If they're not polite, they play on their phone. Now they're active, okay? So they do something. And they actually quite like it. So I'm there to, you know, kind of help them. I say this is, or I even use it in teaching actively. I say, this is the question, and I kind of write it in front of them, and we test it, and they try to enter it as well. And this is quite good. And if we have immediate feedback, they also have fun chemicals in their brain. I hope that leads to better retention in terms of material that we're teaching. So this is actually very, very good. And some of them have asked us to delete their play record in this course so they can start again before the exam. So we've had to do that for two people. Okay, so this is the new part. So we've got like create statements that you can write. You know, you've got a specification like you do in business, and then you have to create a table. And this was a technical extension as well. We needed some figure out how to test these things in the system. And then there's another one. So this is like a more complex business puzzle. There's a specification at the top. You've got these bits that you pull into the other field, and this is when you've pulled them in, you see the answer. So it's all tested against a small SQL-like database. Okay, so Shari is playing on is playing and improving the usability. She did a survey. She established the priorities. She implemented and tested, and we can now basically scale up. Because with the system we have, we couldn't scale up to 500 questions. This is our goal, to have 500 questions, hopefully. And this is, do I have time? Or yeah. I would say people who want to see a demo, they come to my laptop. It runs on a local infrastructure at the FHNW. It needs a university login. We're going to release the code at some point. I don't know whether I can, if I press that, will that play the video? Yeah, so these, so she's pulling the bricks into this area and then submit, and she's adding some sounds. We also have a button to switch off the sound, and fireworks appear as well, you know, things like this. So we're trying to go into more gamification because we needed to have a repository of problems, and now we can add gamification features. So the guy who's doing NoSQL in the autumn, he's going to add an avatar and make this avatar change and stuff like this, and maybe some other gamification features. We're also implementing a certificate. So at the end of doing the game, you get a nice certificate, like you get in a game called SQL Island. But SQL Island is very limited. It only offers like about 35 minutes play, and you get a certificate because it has fewer questions. Okay, so to summarize it all, I've had a great time doing it all. It's very useful. Students are involved, they love it, and the acceptance is very high. We've actually published a paper which is on ACM, so if you query in Google Pustulka SQL scrolls, you'll get the ACM paper, which summarizes our, the 2 criteria, basically the student satisfaction and whether they learned something. But that's much harder to prove with classes which have got less than 20 students or 20 or 17 taking part. You don't have statistical significance. So we can only really kind of do subjective evaluations. So we're extending to NoSQL, we're adding more queries, and we're trying to correlate playing with exam success, although I'm not sure whether it's ethically allowed, because we haven't asked the people whether we can do that. So we've got the data, but we're rather treating it anonymized at the moment. Thank you very much. And any questions?
Thank you, Ela. Thank you very much. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. Questions? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is it available for competitive universities to test?
Yes, so I know that one of our teachers, Mark Schaff, also teaches at the HSLU. So he started testing the game recently. We can release the code if anyone wants to install it. The only problem is that we've got an authentication infrastructure. So Lucia had to actually work with the school IT to make it available to everyone at the FHNW. So we can give you the code any day. You just need to port the authentication, unless you want to run an open server that anyone can get to. I'm not sure. I mean, it's up to your IT and security to decide what's appropriate.
Rapid question. The game is mono-user or multi-user? Are there any cooperative or competitive mode for this game?
That is not at the moment. But what students actually do in class when they work with me, they usually, 2 of them work together, you know, and they kind of like, sometimes they work on their own, but quite often they kind of huddle together and they work on it. So it's not under my control how they work, and I just tell them you can work, you know, the way you want.
Nice.
We would like to include something, but basically the main thing for me is the content creation, because we don't want to have examples from a book, you know, they say 2 assistants to 1 manager and calculate how many assistants on average, you know. We don't want to have questions like that. It's kind of like, it's kind of not interesting, really.
Boring, yeah. Last question. We have only 1 minute.
Thank you. Do you need to go through the SQL question before accessing the NoSQL, or
no, it's
you can
the
start
books.
whatever you like
Books are
first?
independent. Initially, we had 2 books. You had to finish the first one before you went to
me,
the
it
second
seemed a
one.
bit counterintuitive.
And now we've decided the students want flexibility. They don't like this. So we could also have a story mode, but we don't really have a good story at the moment. So I'm still thinking on how to do that. I think we've got at least another year of development, you know, with the time we can invest into it. And no money.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you.